Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enhanced Pod. Today's guest is someone that I've had the privilege of knowing since my very first year of university, back in the days of Tygerberg Hospital and Stellenbosch University's Faculty of Health Science. He is a colleague, a friend, an inspiration to me, and definitely one of the coolest doctors in South African sports medicine today, Dr. Raaghib Fredericks, or more affectionately known to me as Dr. Rags or Rags. Now,
There
he's
you go.
worked at the very highest levels of professional sport, serving as team doctor for the DHL Stormers, which in my opinion is the best rugby team in South Africa, bar the Springboks. And he's currently working with Team UAE Emirates XRG, which is one of the biggest cycling teams in the sport today. Adding to that, he is also heading out to France to be a part of their Tour de France campaign with one of the most exciting riders, arguably in the history of cycling, Tadej Pogačar. But long before elite rugby changing rooms and Grand Tour cycling, Raaghib was an accomplished athlete himself, achieving junior national colors in track and field and hockey, which those experiences have no doubt shaped the clinician and sports physician that he is today. So from humble beginnings to the global sporting stage, to having a front row seat to some of his progressions, it's an absolute privilege to welcome him to the pod today. And I have no doubt that he's going to be sharing some incredible insights and inspiring thoughts and bits of wisdom into his journey. So thank you, Rags, for your time.
Thank you very much, Nick. And geez, what an intro, man! You make me sound like I'm some former superstar. I'm just Rags. That's for those of you who know me. And firstly, before I get anything, I also just want to give you your flowers, Nick Pereira, family man, excellent physio. Like, bro, what a long way we've come since 2008 when we started, becoming friends. And actually, even before that, I mean, we've known each other since competing against each other on the field as centre midfielders for Westerford and for Brackenfell High School on the turf. We were I was like, geez, who's this muscular guy trying to dominate midfield? And I was the skinny, lanky one trying to run past people. And yeah, now look at us now, man. It's incredible to sit and chat with you today, and I'm excited for this.
Regs, we do really come a long way, and I think it's so cool if I think of you, that's why it's good to be a good person, because you never know when your paths are going to cross. Relationships are incredibly
100%.
important. But having had a front row seat, I think, to some of your career growth and insights, which, like I said, has been incredibly inspiring. Just take us through your journey into medicine and then sports medicine.
Yeah. So I think it kind of starts a little bit further back than that. And just as a sports person in general, I think to me, because sport is it's such an important part of my life. It's kind of shaped who I am and what I do. And it started out on the cross country field, actually. So I started running on a whim. I competed in like an inter-house athletics competition, and I'd never run before. I was 9 years old. And I lapped the field, and then I realized, well, I've got some form of talent when it comes to some running. It got eventually nurtured to a point where I was a national cross-country champion at 13 for my age group. And as I kind of progressed, and that gave me the opportunity to go to high school on a bursary, which my parents come from very humble beginnings. My dad's a teacher in a very underprivileged community in Delft, and shout out to Uncle G. And my mom has worked in Sanlam for a long time. And it got me an opportunity to get a bursary to go and run, initially at Bellville Technical High School and then later at Brackenfell High School, where I moved down from a kind of longer distance runner to a track and field, to more of a middle distance track and field athlete. And I was fortunate enough to have an incredible coach at high school, who shaped so many athletes over the years at Brackenfell High School. And eventually I in university, my first year of university, also managed to get a bursary at university to study medicine, where I represented South Africa in the 800 meters at the World Junior Championships. But but throughout that time, my personal opinion on sports for the youth is that we should be trying to do as many sports as possible and not focus on a specific one. I think it shapes us more so than just trying to achieve. Achievement is not the important part. It's actually just going to do everything and competing. And because of that kind of passion for sport and the want to achieve, I've always thought, how can I marry my love of the health sciences or the human body, so to speak, with something that I'm truly passionate about. And in 2011, I did an elective in sports medicine at the Sports Science Institute with two professors, Professor Martin Schwalnus and Wayne Derman, who are icons within the sports medicine world, as you know. And at the time, there was an associate name called Dr. Jeroen Swart. He was still Dr. Jeroen Swart at the time, and I got to meet him. And when I did when I decided to enroll in sports medicine as a master's in my postgrad, the first person that interviewed me was Jeroen Swart, and so he eventually became my professor. Now he's my colleague and my partner in my practice. So it feels like a proper full circle moment of 15 years of knowing Jeroen, and now he's an incredible mentor and a friend, and that's kind of where the journey for me in sports medicine started. It started with the start of that title, which is sports, and I encourage everyone to try and go for it. It really can bring us together and take us on journeys where we otherwise wouldn't have had that opportunity to.
Rags, I want to ask you a question quickly and just touch on something that you
said.
I think for a lot of people, they might hear your story, and obviously now, retrospectively, it sounds like it all happens quite naturally. But I think now that we're a little bit older, we're almost touching 40, the two of us.
Yes, exactly.
We're a bit more reflective. What do you think some of the traits that you showed as either a student or a young professional that helped you to make such a good impression or just make such a huge impression on these influential mentors, future partners? Because it's not easy to do that, and it's very hard to kind of coach that for someone. But what do you think now it was that made such a good impression?
Yeah, I think to me, really, it was kind of two main things that stood out for me. I think one is commitment, because, as a sports person as a whole, you can't get really far without a level of commitment, a level of what's the word? Almost like self accountability in that sense. So I never missed as far as possible, and I never missed a training session. If I was injured, I was ill, I tried to attend those sessions. I tried to be a part of it the best that I could. And then the second thing is really just showing a genuine passion for it. So, people come into our industry for the wrong reasons oftentimes. They come into it because they want the glamour, they want the prestige, they want to be seen. And actually, as clinicians, we want to be the opposite. We actually want to be the support, and you're not doing it to be seen or to be heard. You're actually doing it because you want to support the athletes, and you want to see the athletes do the best that they possibly can, but also keep them safe. So I think those two things, I mean, I can't speak for anyone the way that they interpret it, but I feel quite strongly about it, that, if your motives are true, if your motives are really related to where you want to go, if your motives are for the right reasons, it will shine through at the end of the day. And I remember in my interview with Jeroen at the time, and another partner, Dr. Caroline Dalton, they asked me, what is my vision for sports medicine in the future? And I come from a very underprivileged background, in a sense. My parents did lots to provide me with the opportunities that I had, and I'm so thankful for them. But the one thing I'm still strongly passionate about, it's one thing I still want to bring, is sports medicine to the community, because we've got so much talent and so much ability out there, but the resources aren't always available. And so eventually I want to create something for them. And I can see how in their minds, their faces lit up a little bit, because they could see, well, he's actually caring about this, and how do we actually make that happen? Because this is going to be the person that's going to hopefully, eventually, if the opportunity arises, come to fruition.
That's amazing, Rags. And thanks for sharing that. I want to just maybe last piece on the early years. Just I think a lot of
Mm,
people would want to know, um, how did you get into rugby and the Stormers? What were your early
mm, mm,
years
mm,
like at the Stormers? I mean, you don't just go straight to
mm,
the URC.
mm.
What did that
Yeah,
journey specifically in rugby look like for you?
yeah. So it started out actually with me when I was doing my postgrad. I was still working full time in the emergency center, but on my off days, I would go to our practice, which is the current practice that I work at, Cape Sports Medicine. And on my off days, I would show up in the boardroom and sit and study and shadow the doctors and try to learn as much about the craft as I possibly could. And it's actually a very, very, very important person in my life, Dr. Jason Suter, who I'll never forget it. I was sitting in the boardroom and I was studying, and he walked in and he looked at me and he said, "Hey, you Raaghib, aren't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he was like, "Do you want to do Boland rugby?" And I said to him, yes. Like, I didn't even think about it. I didn't know the details. I didn't know what it would entail. Um, but it took one person that saw me show up every day to show some form of, like passion and encouragement, and like really just be there to say like, hey, this guy seems to be potentially the right person. Obviously, there was a lot of like, they needed a lot of mentorship and a lot of leadership and a lot of like support for me to do that. But that was in around 2017, I think, 2017 or 2018. I can't quite remember the year. But I started working with Boland Rugby as a part-time. So I worked in Boland Rugby with at the time it was still the Super Sport Challenge competition, and then the Currie Cup first division, so just below the Premier Division. And I worked with another wonderful physiotherapist who you would know as Vernick Smith. He's the physio with the Sevens Rugby, the South African Sevens at the moment. And that year really shaped me a lot because I got to work in a space that was a semi-professional with lots of amateurs, with people that had medical aid, that didn't have medical aid. I did, medical screenings for the first time. And it must have made an impression because the following year, when Jason went back to the Stormers as their senior consultant, and our practice took over the contract with the DHL Stormers, Jason said, "Well, look, we need a junior doctor. So, are you interested in coming and helping us out with Western Province Rugby?" And that's how the journey started. Is that I started with Western Province Rugby, also with their Super Sport Challenge team, and then with the under-19s and under-21s, and that was in 2018 and 2019. And so then I'd work for about 2 years, and then Jason said, "Well, look, we're creating a bit of a bigger structure, and we're taking over all the medical services." So he suggested that we need 2 senior doctors. The one would do Super Rugby, the other one would do Currie Cup. And in 2020, we all know what happened in the early parts of 2020, and the vid came along and it changed the landscape of sporting for all of us. And at the time, Western Province Rugby as a whole was also in some difficulty in the boardroom. So when Super Rugby ended and Currie Cup campaign was started, I was going to be the doctor. So what was supposed to be a slow kind of filtering into the system became a big trial by fire, sink or swim scenario. So now not only was I managing COVID, but I was managing all of the Springbok years that we see today. I mean, we had Bongi Mbonambi and Stephen Kutsoff and Siya Kolisi and, all of these big names. And here's this relatively junior doctor coming in and telling them, "Hey, you need to wear a mask and you need to self-isolate and you need to do these things." And basically I had to be the bad guy. When me, Nick, I don't ever want to be the bad guy. I want to be the good guy. But what I learned is that, sometimes you just have to be the bad guy. And it was a trial by fire and it didn't come easy, but eventually I gained the trust of the coaching staff and of management, and 6 years later I was still in the building. So things must have gone right at some point.
Regs, I want to just highlight a couple of things that you said for the listeners, and I think it's something that I see with all the guests, and I'm going to name drop here, but Anu and
Mm,
Robin, obviously from the Springboks and a colleague of
yes,
yours at the Stormers,
correct.
Sizwe Khadebe from the Proteas, Naleen Hoffman-Kellerman, Protea woman, Darren Berry from the Bulls, all these guys who are in the elite spaces in South Africa, there's familiarities in that story or similarities in that story where you have to have genuine passion. You got to pitch up. You got to be committed. You got to kind of, if there's a trial by fire sort of moment, you got to embrace it and go with it. And then the rest is kind of up to, fate and the universe, and what will be will be.
Correct.
But
Yeah.
I think it's got a crazy way of like self-selecting. So the people that need to be in the right spots eventually get into the right
Yeah.
spots. Everyone's journey is different and timelines are different, but you eventually get there if you've got the right stuff. So my
Yeah.
advice to younger people listening or students that say, hey, I want to be the UAE Emirates XRG cycling doctor, just like Rags. It's a long journey, guys. So start somewhere and just enjoy all the parts of it, and
Yeah.
enjoy loving the journey. And I tell people as well, be a bit of a nerd about physio, sports medicine, whatever it is, because I think that's an important part of growing and showing authenticity and connecting with coaches, athletes all along the
Correct.
way.
Yeah.
So it's just interesting that the more people I speak to, we kind of hear the same threads from the story, and it's so cool to see these are the people that are excelling in the highest sort of arenas of sport.
There is just one thing I would like to add, and it's probably quite niche to our industry, and I think particularly in elite sport, is that sports medicine is a science for sure, but it's also a little bit of an art, and part of that art is actually just being part of a team. I think that's key. We've seen excellent doctors and physios all over the place, and they're wonderful at their craft. But if you don't marry with the ethos of the team or the ethos of the people that you work with, it's not going to work. So to me, that is sometimes the fit just isn't the fit, and it's not a personal thing. It's not about you as a human, or what you do, or it's not about your work ethic necessarily, but it's not a one size fit all type of scenario. There are certain times when, and you see it in, you see it in professional sport all the time, when coaching staff are maybe coach a certain way, but the athletes don't maybe link to it. In our industry, it's something similar. So it's like you say, things work themselves out. But an important part is, just try to be part of the team, because that to me is it's an important part of sports medicine. Okay, it's something that Jason and I talk about all the time. The biggest asset that we have is that we are part of the team, and we try to be part of the team. And so when people feel comfortable around you, it makes your job so much easier.
I think that's something that's sometimes tricky for people to understand, that it's
Correct.
not just about the clinical skills that you bring. You have to be a team player, a collaborator,
Correct.
your communication skills, the messaging needs to be
100%.
consistent. It's almost like it's actually interpersonal or inter and intrapersonal skills that you need to display. And that kind of all has to be authentic and organic for you to get the buy-in and results. And some people just don't have it, and that's also okay. But
Which is,
I
it's
think,
also okay. Yeah.
yeah, I think again, it's probably one of the many reasons why you've excelled, because I know you outside of being a clinician as well, and all the parts to Dr. Rags for me kind of fit really authentically together. So you're the same guy when practicing medicine as you are just shooting the breeze and having a chat. Yeah, if we could put that in a textbook, I think it would sell.
It would be amazing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's just something that people need to figure out on their own. Rags, I want to just I want to touch a little bit on this contrast between your two worlds, or maybe we can say three worlds. I always tell people, especially when you're younger, and maybe you making a case of even throughout your whole career, it's an incredible advantage to work in diverse settings. So you've got the team sport of rugby, and you've taken that to basically the highest level. URC is international franchise rugby. You take cycling, and you're involved in arguably the biggest team in global cycling, and you mix in with that in rugby, you've got guys like Bongi and Sia, and a generational talent like Sacha that you're working with. In cycling, you're working with arguably another generational talent like Tadej Pogačar. And then on top of that, you've got the clinic, where you find the recreational athlete, the pro from a different sporting code that gets sent to you guys at Cape Sports Med. What do you think the advantages of having such a diverse background is, firstly?
Yeah, I think it shapes your I think it shapes you as a clinician significantly. I think that it does change. It does change your approach from time to time because, I'm not a rugby doctor. I'm not a cycling doctor. I'm a sports physician. So to me, the kind of varied approaches to different sports makes you understand, and I think it makes you a more well-rounded kind of clinician, if that makes sense. Um, each of those aspects of my career have their challenges. For example, like the rugby athlete is not exactly the same as the cycling athlete. They're both team sports, but the cycling athlete is very focused on their own numbers, their own performance, their own levels. They've got their own coach. Um, so there's an individualistic kind of concept within a team sports environment, and they've each got their roles. In a similar way to rugby, because rugby, yes, every athlete has got their own roles. Like you need to scrum, and the line-out jumpers need to know their calls and need to be able to jump. Kickers need to know they've got their own individual skills. But the team concept within the rugby space is a lot more team environment based. Do you know what I'm saying? Not that the cycling athlete is not, but there's definitely more focus on individual performance as it relates to team performance. It's not easy to hide in the peloton. Okay, it's not easy to hide. If you're supposed to do a job and you don't do your job, you can get called out immediately because the numbers are there. In a rugby space, it might also be true to a degree, but it's a little bit easier to. Someone else can pick up the slack if you, let's say your scrum isn't working for the day, but Sacha's having an incredible game. It changes that scenario for you entirely. From the clinic perspective, what the challenges there are more around being accurate, but you've got a lot more time. So you've got time to sit, take your time to consult, take your time to figure things out. It's over a period of weeks to months, depending on the type of condition that people come in with. And luckily for us at CSM, we try to keep ourselves as upskilled as we possibly can, and so we try to create a bit of a one-stop shop. You get your consultation, your ultrasound, your diagnosis, and your treatment in one go, as far as we possibly can do it. Now, that doesn't exist everywhere, but we're lucky enough to be able to create that. But that took time to create that. And I remember when I first started consulting, it was like, oh, geez, I need to send someone for this. It takes weeks before you get to where you need to go. Now it's become a little bit easier to get there. So they each come with their own challenges, but to me, I wouldn't change anything about it because it's made me rounded. And if I could do a recommendation to any young sports physician or budding sports physician that wants to get out there, get involved in rugby. And maybe I'm a little bit biased when I say that, but the rugby space is, the challenges you deal with that is significant. You're dealing with traumatic injuries, with overuse injuries. You're dealing with a massive team environment where you're dealing with lots of personalities. Even for example with COVID, when we had the endemic outbreak, with an outbreak, you're dealing with like flipping even just public health type of scenarios. So that really keeps you rounded and grounded. And then from there, you can kind of offset into different bases where you need to go. And I know you have a similar story, Nick, because you obviously started in football and then you worked into a rugby, into schools rugby. And maybe you can tell us a little bit about, how that shaped you as a clinician, where you are working in elite cricket now.
And same as you, Rags. I would say I think the football was my rugby,
Yeah,
because I think schools rugby is probably a little bit more resourced at some. I mean, depending on the school, obviously, but the school that
yeah,
I'm involved in, I would say is probably better resourced than a lot of like amateur club type systems. But I remember going back to varsity at shout out Stellenbosch again, being involved in like local club rugby, Durbell,
yes,
Marties, and some of the age groups over there. I think if you want to be in the sports space, I think rugby is probably one of the best sports to cut your teeth on. And I've been there
yeah,
a little bit as well. And then I think similarly, when I started working in the professional space, I think football was the same because it's demanding. There's a lot of injuries.
mm,
There's a lot of pressure. South
mm,
African football is just a very unique beast in its own right. But yeah, I'm with you where I think the more diverse your clinical settings are, it does make you a more rounded clinician. But I think you've mapped it out so well there, where you say like in the clinic space, it's the space where you've probably got the most time and the least pressure. where you can take a bit of
Correct. Yeah.
time to figure it out. But sometimes in a rugby game or in a cycling race, you've got to make a decision within a few minutes, if even a minute, about can this athlete continue? Is it safe to do so? Is it not? And you've got to filter through your whole library of knowledge and experience in a time frame of a minute to make a decision that's going to affect the outcome of the race, the health of the athlete, the performance of the team, which I
Correct.
know there's a lot of moving parts in sport, but on the sports med side, I think we take our roles incredibly seriously in that.
Of
So
course. Yeah. Of
having
course. Of
having a
course.
diverse sort of lens to look through, I think, is a massive advantage there. Rags,
Definitely.
you touched a little bit on the sort of the intricacies of cycling. It's a very
Mm.
data-driven sport, especially pertaining to physiology, and it's one of the things where I think when I did my postgrad and learnt about exercise physiology and endurance sports, cycling for me is the purest form of that. And I'm saying that as someone that likes to run and runs the marathon
Yeah.
distance, plods the marathon distance. I want to just ask you, for a physio, for a rehabilitator working with, mountain bikers, cyclists, it's a huge sport in South Africa as well. How involved do you need to be as a clinician in the sport or understanding the physiology part of it? Because we tend to focus, physios, sports doctors, on the pathology side. When something goes wrong, what happens? But how important is to understand the physiology that's happening in the background?
Mm. I think it's important to understand the physiology. I don't necessarily think it's essential to understand the performance part of the physiology, if that makes sense. It's definitely beneficial. So, for example, if you understand, what a rider's FTP is, or what the FTP is, their functional threshold power, or if this is the output of watts per kilo, because watts is king in the cycling world. If you know, for example, the just general physiology around what happens when they go to altitude, what is the physiological adaptations when they do altitude training. Those things are important because I think as a sports physician primarily, it's probably essential because you drive the things that get driven. Is important for the cyclist. They'll ask you those questions. Like how is this going to affect my hemoglobin or whatever? How is this going to, being at, how long do I need to be at altitude training? Those sort of things are, in my opinion, at the elite level, essential. At the level of just being a general clinician around it, I think it's important to understand it, but I don't think it's like essential knowledge. You don't have to be elite cycling fundi to work in a cycling space. I'm an elite cycling fundi because I got into the sport and I appreciate the sport for what it is. So I became inquisitive around, what does this mean when someone is talking about their fat sat max, or what does this mean when they're talking about like if they're doing neuromuscular training sessions. Those little things change, and so it becomes to me, it feels like it's made me more in tune with the cyclist. And it kind of comes back to my point a little bit. If you can have the same chats with the same athletes, with the athletes, then it becomes easier for them to interact with you. They tend to trust you a little bit because you know what you're talking about. In the same way, like we South Africans, so we know rugby. Rugby is in our blood. We've watched it for years. We understand. If you don't know the rules around the maul and the scrum, and the coach is telling you something on the radio, and you don't know what you're saying, then she's like, there's a lack of communication, which is a key thing. So, like you say, become a bit of a nerd in your industry, but I think also become a bit of a nerd in the sport that you're involved in.
I think there's an element of you have to actually try and enjoy it. Or similar, I think
Correct.
similarly
Also true.
when I got into football, South African football. Obviously, I'm a huge football fan. I know you are a United guy through and through. I'm an Arsenal guy, so I'm a champion
Oh,
right now.
I can't believe you brought this up, man.
It felt natural. It just came in. So following European football to getting into the PSL, people say there's a big gap, but I think when I dived in, I got to know all the players. I'm Googling like who these guys are, and I'm looking at the team sheets of our position, and then you kind of like following the news about it, and all of a sudden at home you've got Supersport Blitz on, and you're following all the PSL games, and you can immerse yourself, I think, in any sport. I think when I did going into cricket and learning the domestic cricket in South Africa, the same thing. Going into like the franchise cricket leagues, same thing. So I think it's really just immerse yourself. If that's a space that you're interested in, then don't be shy. Become a nerd. Enjoy
100%.
it. Figure it out. And I think that's one of the cool things about sports. There's so much coverage for everything. You can deep
Yeah.
dive. Like there's news, there's articles, there's so many different media outlets. You can just Instagram and follow all the top cyclists and get some insights. You can follow Pogačar on Strava and learn a little bit about his physiology and cycling. So just dive in and drink deeply from that fountain of knowledge, everybody.
Yeah, correct, man. It's actually only just going to enrich you in a way. There's this kind of dopamine chase that the humans do these days, where we want to scroll on Instagram and want to see these things. Like, if you want to make use of your time, get into something that you're really interested in, and you'll find that it's like, it becomes almost this bottomless pit of just like information and knowledge and sharing, and it makes you actually excited about it, which is fantastic. Yeah.
That's such a good point, and I'm gonna randomly segue here because
Yes.
my algorithm for Instagram has just turned into this like rehab, team
Same.
sport screening, profiling type of thing, and it's happened kind of naturally, organically. But again, it's a good way to use this like infinite scroll for good, if we can say that.
For
Like,
good, yeah.
I
I
open my
agree.
Instagram now, within a couple of seconds, if I go on to an explore or something, I'm going to find something in rehab or tendon loading or whatever I seem to be looking into at that stage. So maybe the tip for people is also to use your resources around you smartly.
100%, definitely. And there's such great resources out there. People are creating such good content. Obviously, you have to filter through, what's good or not good. But yeah, I'm learning. I've learned lots this year. I've tore my hamstring a few weeks ago, and I've had a hamstring tendinopathy for a long period of time. And to be honest with you, lots of my rehab kind of plans have been similar to what my bios and my physios have told me to do. And I've just looked at it and I was like, oh, well, I've seen this. This is the technique. And yeah, I think it's wonderful, man. I think it's great.
Yeah. Rex, I would probably be upset with myself if I didn't ask you this question selfishly, but I want to give you the freedom
Yes.
to interpret it and answer as much or as little as you want to, or as you can. But for me, I mean, Sia Kolisi, Benambi, Stephen Kitsov, like, you've worked with some of the biggest rugby players, but something that's so exciting for me at the moment is Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu. Now, we take rugby and we take cycling, someone that's I'm incredibly excited about in the cycling space, because also during my postgrad, I've had Professor Jeroen Swart speak about the numbers that this young Slovenian can put out, Tadej Pogačar. I want to ask you, what is your take on working with what seems to be these generational talents in two very different sports? I mean, you might be a 1 in a million or billion type of clinician that's actually working with, or have worked with these sort of subsets. What makes them stand apart? What are they like? What's your role in kind of supporting those types of athletes?
So they are actually more similar than what you think. And I'm going to group Sacha Feinberg-Mngomezulu and Damian Willemse in the same category, because in my opinion, I think they are two peas in a pod in terms of like ability and talent. But they are the most professional. They are the ones that know their detail. They are the ones that do their research. They are absolute rugby nerds, okay? Especially Damien. Damien watches rugby 24/7, 7 days a week. He knows everything about the English Premiership. He knows all the stuff about top 14. He probably can tell you stuff about the Japanese League One. He can tell you everything. And it's that detail and that attention to detail that I think makes them stand out. Of course, they are incredibly talented, but we've seen multiple talents before that have fallen along the wayside because they don't nurture their talent. They are the most focused when it comes to thinking about their nutrition, about their recovery, how they're conditioned. Those things are super important. And Tadej is in the same light in that sense. Tadej is the biggest cycling nerd I've ever met in my life. Absolutely. He can tell you everything about any cyclist from any generation, about this attack on that side. He watches podcasts. He does absolutely everything in a cycling space. And he is so detail orientated with regards to, he'll be the first one to tell you that a few years ago, he was maybe like, he relied lots on his talent and his ability and his mentality. But as soon as he changed his approach to, what is my nutrition like? What's my recovery going to be like? What is my equipment like? He's like the most stickly person about equipment, which is like I've ever met. So his mechanic, Bostian Kauchnik, is just as, nerdy around the equipment as he is. So, so they check everything, they check, where do I get the benefit from rolling resistance on my wheels and tires, for example, and how aero is this bike? How can I reduce this weight? All of those little things, in the same way that Gaz and Sacha are around, what if we do this movement around, if we're playing this attack or this defense? They create their own plan. So to me, it's around that attention to detail in every single aspect that sets them apart from other people. Obviously, the numbers themselves stand to reason. Tadej is a physiological freak. Okay, his ability is in my opinion at least, he's the best athlete on earth. Okay, in all sports, he's the best athlete on earth, just with his ability that he does in his event. But I think it can translate to so many other events. But the same way is that, if we took Sacha and told him to play a Mvela League game, well, it's not Mvela League now, it's what, Patrice Motsepe league. If we asked him to play in that league today, he could probably hold his own on a football field. Probably. I'm putting it out there, Sacha. If you play B division, you could probably hold your own. But that's just the nature of their abilities. But it's the nurture part of their abilities that I think comes in. And, Nick, we've seen it with generational footballers. Cristiano Ronaldo has only gone as long as he has because that attention to detail is beyond just what he's done with his talent.
That is such a great point that you've made, Rags, because it's often hard for us to get our heads around what makes these guys tick. But like you say, at that level, everyone's got talent. It's the way that they
Correct.
nurture it, curate it, and the detail, I think it's there. And maybe similarly applies to clinicians. The higher you get up, every clinician in a Grand Tour cycling team is good. Every sports doc physio that's at the URC level or international rugby is they're there for a reason. What sets them apart, maybe the detail, the attention, the lessons that they've taken out from their journey there. Rags, I could literally chew your ear for hours, but I need to start bringing this thing full circle.
Okay, no problem.
We haven't got to all the things that I wanted to get, but I think we've set ourselves up nicely for like a pre-Tour de France episode with you, and then maybe we can do one in the third or fourth quarter of the year where we can kind of unpack some of that experience on your next little block where you have some time. But let me go through some quick rapid fire questions. So you just answer as short or as long as you want to. First one, if I had to ask you, do like a classic or one-day cycling event, if you got to be the doctor there for today, or you got to do a Stormers game, which one would you pick?
Tour of Flanders. That's the one I would pick.
Okay. I know you're a cyclist. Do you prefer to do hard workout intervals, hills, sprints type of thing, or would you prefer to do a coffee ride?
Coffee ride all day long, every day.
If you had to sort of unpack from the clinic space, what is a sports medicine myth that you find a lot of athletes or recreational people come to you with?
Oh, that's a good question. This is actually a myth. So people think that if they run for long periods of time, their legs are going to get stronger. Okay, that's technically a myth in a sense. So yes, you will get stronger, but you'll get stronger in the sense of like endurance strength. So you'll be able to run longer, but to get stronger, you need to load. Okay, and you need to load. Okay, my new favorite saying that I tell to my patients and athletes these days is you need to earn the right to do your sport. Earn the right to run, earn the right to cycle, earn the right to play your sport. And the only way you do that is by conditioning. If you don't condition, you're going to get injured. as night follows day, that's how it's going to happen.
100%. I think that's a great piece of free advice for everybody.
Yes.
Before
Yeah.
you see Dr. Rags, make sure you're trying to earn it, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Rags, what do you find is one of the most underrated recovery modalities for the elite athlete?
Sleep. By far. Sleep is king.
Let's dive into that a little bit. I see you with your Whoop. I've got my Ultra Human
Yep.
here as well.
Yep.
Unpack us a little bit into why sleep. How do you measure it? What are you looking at when Sacha or Tadej shows you their Whoop data? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so we're looking at I think we're looking at a few things that influences sleep. So I'm gonna go a little bit physiological here, but we all know the sleep hormone is melatonin. And melatonin is influenced by two main things. The first thing is consistency. So point number one is try to stick to a consistent time. It's not always easy, but consistency, I think, is key. And the second thing is light. So, that's why we tell people an hour before sleep, make sure your screens are gone, make sure you dim your lights, so keep your lights at a low level as possible. Wear your, protective glasses or those sort of things that make your sleep that help with your sleep patterns. The other thing is caffeine. So obviously caffeine intake can influence because it can delay, you get that adrenergic surge. It's tough in an elite sporting perspective. So for example, like if a rugby player's kickoff is at 5 and they're using a caffeine gel during the event, it's not ideal for their sleep. But sleep is it's our body. It is the body's way of resetting. It's the body's recovery. It's the body's way of building all of those adaptations of the day's work. So if you're not getting adequate amounts of sleep, you're not going to, all of those factors that we see on our wearables, heart rate variability goes down, resting heart rate goes up, stress hormone levels rise, and you can track the trend as you're going along. It's quite typical of, even for me, like I'm not even the athlete, but for example, on my Whoop, when you'll see later down, like as you get to the third week of the Grand Tour, the Whoop gives you like green, yellow, and red kind of recovery scores as you're going along. And as you kind of start, you're kind of in the green, and it slowly but surely just dips, and you go into the yellow, and some days it's red, and some days more yellow. But those last 3 weeks, it's just constantly in the lower recovery scores. So that's obviously a marker of, fatigability over a period of time. But you can dripper that system, man. Like you can con the system if you just do some simple things.
That's a great answer and insight, and I love that more people are getting into it. There's all these different wearables, the Whoops, even the smart watches are doing it at the moment. So I think that's
Correct,
an exciting space for just the recreational athlete to track their own performance. And maybe we can follow up a little bit more there on our part 2 with you post Tour de France.
It's a good idea.
I'm going to ask you one final question, and I know you're a very thoughtful, philosophical guy. I want to ask you, what would you say is just one lesson that being involved in sport as a career has taught you about life?
One lesson is that, there are good people in the world. Okay, that's probably the one lesson, is that there are good people in the world. And I've been privileged enough to meet multiple people at multiple classes and multiple races and multiple cultures. But good people are good people. And if you are, I'd say the take-home message for me is that if you're a good person, one, you're going to be a lot more happy off. And I think you'll be surrounded by other good people, which is going to provide you with some form of joy and purpose in life. So yeah, find the good people, stick with them, and you'll go far.
All right, guys. If you want to follow and be a little bit closer to the insights of Dr. Rags, make sure you give him a follow on Insta. I think you do share a good amount of behind the scenes into some of your traveling and time in the sporting space. I'll link your handle in the episode description so people can follow you. But I want to just give a couple of shout outs. Shout out to you, Rags, firstly, for your time and making yourself available. We messed up the first recording earlier in the week, so we had to do a follow-up. So I've wasted a lot of this guy's time, but thank you so much for
not at all,
being
man.
available.
It's always a pleasure.
shout out to your practice and all your partners at Cape Sportsmed, doing incredible things for a very long time and being massive contributors to the sports medicine landscape. So shout out CSM. I want to say thank you for to your teams for letting you be a part of this. Shout out to Boland Rugby, the Stormers, Team Emirates XRG for just shaping you and helping you become the guy that you are. And I want to say, watch the space, because I mean you've accomplished an incredible amount for a guy that's as young as you are, Rags. But at the same time, I've got no doubt that the next 10, 20 years is going to be even bigger. So I'm looking forward to maybe being employed by you one day, or collaborating with each other one day. I think our
Collaborate.
dream is
Yeah.
always, maybe we end up in the same
Always.
center or team or something and get to kind of work together a lot closer. But it's been such an inspiration to watch your journey, man. And I look forward to what the future holds for you. So thank you for all your work, and keep being an incredible contributor to our landscape and an inspiration to so many other clinicians, man. Thank you.
Nick, thank you so much, man. And also, just again, flowers to you, my brother. Thank you for kind of keeping our industry flying high. You are a pioneer in your own right, and it's been incredible to see your journey from us going to Ace Dancer together at Stellenbosch to now you being a father and father to two beautiful kids and a husband, and at the elite level. I'm super proud of you and looking forward to seeing your journey. I'd love to one day get to work with you in a professional space. We'd have lots of fun and lots of laughs, and we'd probably get no work done because we'd just be talking nonsense the whole day. But that's also fine. I'd enjoy that too.
Thanks, Rags. I really appreciate the time.